Hello, esoteric bibliophiles. Sam here. Um, Today's chat is going to be a quick run through some books on the sociology of religion, particularly, but not exclusively, those that deal with Neo-Paganism and modern witchcraft in the United States and North America in general. Um, why sociology? Why aren't I just going to, run through some grimoires or something? I think I probably should at some point do that because human beings make our own history, but we don't make it just as we please. We make it under circumstances that aren't chosen by ourselves, but those we find ourselves in that are given and transmitted from the past. So we have to look at ourselves in a social context. We have to understand our religions, our values, witchcraft, all the other things that we do together as being things that we do together. And sociology is the study of society, the study of people doing things together. And I think it's important to have a little bit of a grounding in that, when we look at these larger movements that interest us, or even more narrowly at the forces that are acting in our own lives. Oh, by the way, that quote was from Karl Marx, the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon. So I'm going to start by walking through a couple of foundation sociology of religion, sociology in general, texts that I think people should have some kind of familiarity with. Um, Beginning with Max Weber's The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, originally published 1930. This edition is Rutledge, 1992. Um, this is a classic work which put the rise of capitalism and the Protestant Reformation into the same analytical framework. He argued that values that were promoted by Protestantism, that is the idea of the idea that God has already chosen who is going to go to hell and who is going to go to heaven, conditioned Protestants to try into a state of anxiety, to try to find some way that they could prove to themselves that they were amongst the elect. And one way of proving that is by being blessed in this life, by having wealth and power and a meaningful, good life in this life. And so he argues that Protestantism preconditioned people to become capitalists, to work really hard, accumulate wealth, and reinvest it and get the capitalist wheels rolling. Uh, interesting. I don't 100% agree with him, but it kick-started modern sociology. It's worth looking at for historical value. A much more recent book, Ritual Theory, Ritual Practice, by Catherine Bell, whose work is absolutely brilliant. This book is a little thick and chewy, I will warn you. If you don't have some background in theory, you will find it rather difficult. Published by Oxford University Press in 1992. Um, it's it's really quite a brilliant book. That's simple to say. She looks at all of the different theories of ritual and of religion and gives a very good overview of the development of these ideas, who had them, where they came from, what effects they have had on subsequent scholars. It's useful for the historiography. But Most valuable to me is the way that she situates ritual as a human activity. Uh, the gods do not hand down from Olympus or wherever the rituals and the religion. We create them ourselves. We create them together, and there's some key facts in how we create ritual together that she explains in some depth. Um, Particularly the idea of a ritual actor. Ritual acts are not the thing that they refer to. When you sit down with friends and have a bite to eat and a glass of wine, that's not a ritual. A ritual is when you say some significant words and eat particular foods and drink the wine in a particular way. And why is it a ritual? How does it become a ritual? It becomes a ritual because we see it as a ritual, because we become ritual actors. And as we become ritual actors, we make ordinary life, ordinary activities significant. We bring meaning into them. We generate connections with them. Um, really, just a lovely book. Yeah, ritual use of language. The the idea that ritual and it fits together with ideology or doesn't. The power of ritualization, which is the key of her schema, that by training people to become ritual actors, by ritualizing aspects of life, we connect ordinary life up with things that are greater than ordinary life. Good book, actually, more than good book. An incredibly brilliant book. Um, Here's an exceptionally useful collection uh, of basically fairly practical stuff. The Future of Religion, Secularization, Revival, and Cult Formation by Rodney Stark and William Sims Bainbridge. I've had this book since shortly after it was published. Let's see, it was published in 1985. I think I got it about 2 years later. Um, what it is it's a collection of work based in substantially in field work in different new religious movements in the United States on religion. What is religion? How do churches, sects, and cults differ from one another? What causes sects to form? What what are examples of different sectarian movements and how do they work? Um, Sect transformation, models of cult formation, um, and very interesting stuff on how people come to be involved in religious movements. Basically, going and knocking on doors is a waste of time. Mormon missionaries spend 2 years knocking on doors and they convert one person on average. What what brings people to religious movements is having friends and family who are involved in them. Their friends and family bring them just to check it out. They find that it works for them and they stick around. So, finding ways that your religious movement can attract people who have a wide network of contacts and that it can satisfy the long term needs of people in religious movements is the key. Um, just very data driven. They have quite a few charts and um, a focus on the nuts and bolts of measuring who's around, how many people grow in different religious groups, and so on. They don't care particularly about belief. It's not important in their schema. Theology is irrelevant. Um, Except insofar as people find different theologies satisfying and the things that different religious bodies do for them useful to them. Yes, an excellent book. I've read it through several times since I got it. This is there's a theory, a theory of religion by Rodney Stark and William Sims Bainbridge, published in 1987. This is published by Rutgers University Press in 1996. This is probably the most important, certainly the most influential currently theory of how religions come into existence, how they organize themselves, how they develop, grow or die, how the gods are seen, and how we incorporate gods into our lives and into our religions. What's notable about it is that it is very it's set up logically. They set up a series of propositions, develop consequences from each of these propositions, generate new propositions, and it's all perfectly logical. Beginning with Proposition 1. Human perception and action take place in time, from the past into the future, and then they define what the past and future are. Humans seek what they perceive to be rewards and avoid what they perceive to be costs. This is the key. This is an exchange-based theory of religion, fundamentally an economics theory of religion, where religious bodies are seen as companies or corporations that produce goods for exchange in a marketplace of ideas. The goods that they produce are not material goods principally, although there are material goods involved. And they talk about how these rewards are produced, how people come to desire them, how people will relate to them. Some rewards are limited in supply, including some that simply do not exist. People want more than they already have. And people want some things, such as eternal life, that is highly unlikely to exist. They want a meaningful life, which can be made. They want connection. They seek to get more than they give. And all of these natural, fairly obvious statements result in religious bodies organizing themselves in particular ways. And it's really quite an interesting theory. I don't 100% agree with Stark and Bainbridge, but I have to take them seriously because, among other things, their theory of religion is testable. You can look at religious bodies, look at how they function, and say, okay, does this fit into this set of propositions? And much more often than not, yes, it does. Individuals, maybe not so much, but certainly on the organizational scale, yes. And so, recommend that you read it. And now, a critic of Stark, Nancy Tatom Ammerman's Sacred Stories, Spiritual Tribes, Finding Religion in Everyday Life, published by Oxford University Press in 2014. Ammerman's book is just excellent. It's about finding religion in everyday life, how whereas Stark and Bainbridge are strongly focused on institutions, congregations, churches, and religious bodies. Ammerman talks about how people's spirituality is expressed in our daily lives, how we find connection, meaning, how we make religion together. And there are a number of interviews. She talked to 95 people and asked them to talk about how they found spirituality, what their sacred places are. She had them take photos of their sacred place and talk about it. And and how they do, whom they do religion with. Key to her discussion, one thing I found really quite fascinating is there's this distinction that people often make. The I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, and which they mean they do various spiritual things, meditate, think about religion, have relationships with deities, act in the world in accordance with their beliefs, and so on. Ammerman finds that it is the people who have institutional religious connections, who get together with other people for worship ceremonies, do studies of scriptures, meet together to engage in charitable activities, specifically focused on their religious identification. These are the folks who are more spiritual. That spiritual but not religious is an oxymoron. It is because, again, we create religion together. So, by being together, we make each other stronger in our religious practices and in our beliefs, and we create the religion that we are engaging in. Really interesting book. Now, specifically onto witchcraft and Neo-Paganism. Sabina Magliocco, Witching Culture, Folklore and Neo-Paganism in America, University of Pennsylvania Press, 2004. This is a folklorist looking at how Neo-Paganism is a folk magic tradition, but also how anthropology and folklore fed into neo-pagans' understanding of our spirituality, our spiritual practices, our connections, and the search for meaning. Many of us are mystics. We've had mystical experiences. And we also are folk magic practitioners. We do magical spells to help with healing. We do divination with tarot or other forms. We have pulled together rituals from a variety of cultural and historical circumstances, all of which are typical folk magic practices. Very interesting, an insider's point of view as well. Magliocco is a Wiccan priestess. Yeah, good book, good book, interesting read. One thing that she talks about that I found true and in my own experience, and also quite interesting, is that the neo-pagan movement is full of creativity. We are constantly writing new rituals, engaging in new practices, engaging in bricolage, bringing together new elements and seeing how they work together, inventing new forms of community. It's even more true, of course, now that there's this massive witch talk and online communities of people discussing paganism and witchcraft. Yeah. Okay, speaking of community, A Community of Witches, Contemporary Neo-Paganism and Witchcraft in the United States by Helen Berger, 1999, University of South Carolina Press. This book came out of a survey of witches and pagans that occurred in the late 90s in the United States. So some of the survey elements are by now outdated. It's 25 years later. But this is talking about the witch and neo-pagan communities at a crucial stage in our development when we're starting to have kids, when we're establishing families, when we're building temples and public groups and other community activities together. How is our spirituality and community changing and developing as we are going from being an occult secret society engaging in trance work and often things like sex magic, to being a community with old people, children, um, families, businesses, and all of the other accoutrements of a mature community. An interesting snapshot of what was going on at that time, and some thoughts on the overall adjustment of alternative religious communities as they mature. Um, Teenage Witches: Magical Youth and the Search for the Self by Helen Berger and Douglas Ezzy. Published by Rutgers University Press, 2007. This is an interesting collaborative effort looking at teenage witches, young people who are exploring witchcraft, either because their parents were and they're involved in the community, or because they have run across a few interesting books. It has people from England, Australia, and the United States. And it talks about the experiences of teenage witches in a variety of facets, exploring magic and religion, discovering goddesses, the sense of coming home, of discovering a magical self. Teenagers, of course, are engaged in this period of rapidly developing a sense of who they are as people, not just appendages to their parents, but people in their own right. And so exploring it in the context of a witchcraft or neo-pagan community gives it's an interesting different set of influences. Yes, it's an interesting book. It's a fascinating glimpse into, again, a community as it is maturing, and our young people as they are discovering themselves as young witches. Okay, and a couple more broader sociology, I suppose. This one, The New Metaphysicals: Spirituality and the American Religious Imagination by Courtney Bender, University of Chicago Press, 2010. This is a survey of New Age religious communities in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The different influences that are being brought into the New Age, the different communities that are being formed. People often explore a wide range of different subjects and affiliate briefly or in overlapping with different strains of the New Age, different religious options inside of the New Age community. So she talks about the focus on individualism, experience, and exploration as being a historical phenomenon in American culture, a history that the New Age community is largely ignorant of. They feeling as though they're inventing something brand new, but they are following in the footsteps of the transcendentalists like Emerson, or the spiritualist communities of the 1850s to 1900, or the positive spirituality that gave rise to the New Age as a whole. It is a valuable study, a very valuable study. Talking about not in the context of historical ignorance, but also that these impulses towards exploration, direct experience of the divine, and a an enormous eclecticism with some underlying perennial philosophy notions holding it all together is a continuing thread in American spiritual life and elsewhere, but it's quite prominent in the United States. An interesting study. I'll recommend that one. And finally, this is a collection by Religion on the Edge, Decentering and Recentering the Sociology of Religion, a collection edited by Courtney Bender, Wendy Cadge, Peggy Levitt, and David Smilde from Oxford University Press in 2013. This is sort of like the young Turks of the sociology of religion. A group of young, at that point, young, enthusiastic folk challenging some of the norms, the accepted verities of the sociology of religion, and opening up new ground for exploration. Coping with modernity, looking for a more comparative and historical sociology of religion, looking more strongly into self-creation of religion rather than dealing with religious institutions or the scriptures of various religions, pluralism and secularism. The various diasporas, religions that have moved from one part of the world to another, and how they are hybridizing and working together inside of pluralistic social frameworks. Hinduism has come from India in fairly recent decades in large numbers. Islam, Christianity, of course, is a settler religion. All of these religions, plus indigenous, the survivals of the revivals of indigenous religions and religions that emerged in the United States, are all together in a religious economy, and dealing with them in that way. Yes, it's an interesting collection. It's a very good collection of pieces, and I quite liked it. I'm looking forward to seeing what other things from these scholars I run across. There you go. Well, I know I say interesting far too often in these. The fact is, I talk about these books because I found them provocative. They made me think. They gave me ideas. And hopefully, if any of you read them, some of them will give you some ideas that you can use in your own scholarship and lives. And that's really all that I'm interested in. You take care now. Talk to you soon.